Modernist literature has helped set the stage for themes that continue to influence today's art and media. This podcast will be focusing on how modernist novels and ideas likely helped inspire many of the themes present in the popular series The Twilight Zone. This television show ran from 1959 to 1964, not long after the peak of modernism. Many of its episodes explore grim and shocking ideas in groundbreaking ways, making it a perfect lens in which to consider the effects of the modernist period. I'll be focusing on 3 well-known episodes of The Twilight Zone and tie each of them back to their own respective areas of modernism that we've discussed in this class. The first episode is The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, and it's a good example of modernism's disillusionment with the human race and pessimism in regards to friendship and connections. But basically, everything in the neighborhood starts going wonky, their electricity cuts out, the cars don't work, and a little boy in the town suggests that maybe aliens are causing it. And eventually, everyone becomes paranoid and points fingers at each other. And it gets to the point where someone is shot. Even the little boy is targeted at the end because he suggested it might be aliens. And the final scene of the episode is basically 2 aliens talking to each other and saying that just by messing with their technology, the humans had destroyed themselves, so they didn't even really need to lift a finger. So, obviously, a big theme in an episode like that is that paranoia and cruelty is part of human nature, and humans tend to look out for themselves and not trust other people. So a modernist work that we read this semester that kind of deals with a theme like that would be The Metamorphosis. So these neighbors were on good terms. They knew each other at the beginning, but they ended up attacking each other and getting paranoid and thinking up little things that would make their neighbors suspicious. In The Metamorphosis, Gregor's family contribute to his destruction despite once loving him when he was a human. But when he's this bug, they start to come up with excuses on why he's no longer Gregor. Even Gregor's sister, who originally brings him food and cares for him, eventually starts to neglect him and doesn't want anyone else helping him, so really he just doesn't get any of the care that he needs. And towards the end of the book, his father even attacks him, as seen in the quote. Another one, however, immediately following it, hit squarely and lodged in his back. So that is referring to an apple that his father hurled at him, and that is at the very end of section 2. And at the beginning of section 3, the first opening sentence is, "No one dared to remove the apple lodged in Gregor's flesh, so it remained there as a visible reminder of his injury." So not only do they injure him, but they leave it there to let the apple fester, and it's eventually one of the factors that contributes to him perishing. So we can see here how modernists really take a pessimistic view on human connection, because in both The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street and The Metamorphosis, people who were once on good terms turn on each other and look out for themselves at the end of the day in their own interests. The Monsters Are Due at Maple Street, they want to survive and they don't want to get taken over by aliens. And in The Metamorphosis, Gregor's family want to move on without having to take care of this bug who can't communicate with them or do anything for them. So they both find reasons to dehumanize the people around them. The second episode I want to focus on is Time Enough at Last. It does deal with themes as far as loss, change, and identity. So Time Enough at Last is about a man who loves to read, who has kind of an abusive wife, honestly, who doesn't like him reading and will cross out lines in his poetry books and stuff like that. And he is a bank teller, and his boss is mad at him for always reading, and he goes into the vault to read a newspaper in peace, and there ends up being a huge bomb explosion, and he emerges from the vault as the only survivor that he knows of. He at first feels a lot of despair, but eventually finds a library and he's like, oh, I have all the time in the world. I don't have to talk to my wife. I don't have to have a job. I can just sit here and read these books. But he ends up breaking his glasses, and yeah. But this can relate to one of the novels that we've read, Their Eyes Were Watching God, because the protagonist is held back by his partner. A major driving force is that he can't even be happy when he's out of work because his wife is always holding him back from doing what he loves. In the same way, Janie in Their Eyes Are Watching God is held back from expressing herself or making connections with people because, especially her first two husbands, dictate what she can do and what she can say and basically control her whole life. I mean, it's a little better with Tea Cake. He gives her some freedom, but in the end, she really is following him around and is even abused and beaten by him at one point. So it's still not a perfect example of a relationship. But a disastrous event leads to Tea Cake's demise, not directly, but he's bit by a rabid dog because of the hurricane, and then Janie has to kill him. And I did have that quote right here. So at this point, Tea Cake is out of his mind. He's trying to kill Janie, and Janie has to defend herself. So the quote says, "The pistol and the rifle rang out almost together, the pistol just enough after the rifle to seem its echo. Tea Cake crumpled as his bullet buried itself in the joist over Janie's head." So while in Time Enough at Last, it's a bomb that kills his abusive partner, in Their Eyes Were Watching God, she has to take it into her own hands, at least in the final case. And through these events, they are really both allowed to find their identity without human partnership. Like through the change and the loss that might seem negative at first, Janie becomes independent and goes back to her hometown and seems to be quite happy, while the main character of Time Enough at Last is able to realize that all he ever wanted in life was to be able to read uninterrupted. Like at first he feels despair. Once he finds the library, he's able to find that hope and that piece of himself that he held dear and grow from that. I think this is one of the more optimistic themes that I'm discussing today because it does deal with people, because I think at the core, modernist is a lot about individual people and exploring who they are. And it might not be anything fabulous or heroic, but humans do have things that we hold on to that make us who we are. And part of modernism is exploring that. So finally, I'm moving on to Serve Man, which is an episode about aliens visiting Earth under the guise of helping humanity improve, only for characters to learn at the end that the book that was left behind, titled To Serve Man, does not actually mean to help man, but rather it is a cookbook. So it contains aspects of modernism's harsh look at the corruption that plagues society, most especially people with power. In this case, people with power are the aliens. They have the technology, they want the resources on Earth, and this can be connected to The Heart of Darkness, because The Heart of Darkness examines what happens in areas with imperialism and the dark results of one society pushing in on another. So just as in To Serve Man, humanity is ravaged by an alien race. In The Heart of Darkness, African peoples are oppressed and murdered because of imperialism and white people pushing in on their territory. The theme of wariness in regards to technology can also tie into this episode. In To Serve Man, the technology that the aliens offer is only a guise to fatten up humans, and in The Heart of Darkness, the Europeans have all this technology, but what they do with it is basically force people to work and destroy the landscape, and just really make the lives of the African people much worse than it was before they ever arrived. I'd like to conclude by pointing out the effects of the Twilight Zone, and therefore the effects of modernism have reached far into even today's media, as seen in Black Mirror, as well as in art, films, and other forms of media. We wouldn't be where we are today without modernism, And a lot of the stylistic choices and points made in modernist literature are certainly worth examining and studying today. All right, I think that's it. Thank you for an amazing class, and I hope everyone has a great summer.